Hello and welcome to this edition of Closer Look. I'm your host, Bob Gilmer. On today's show, we'll be talking to members of the North Penn Marching Knights and the parents and staff who make their season happen. Right now, I'm joined by Greg Fox and Katie Love, who are drum majors for the North Penn Marching Knights. I'm also joined by Katie Laps, who is the president of the Guard for the North Penn Marching Knights, and Mike Wojciech, who is the student leader for the drum line. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You guys had quite an exciting season. You had an undefeated regular season. You took second place at Cavalcade, first place for the CNBC Championships, and finally an exciting trip to the Fiesta Bowl in Phoenix, Arizona. It was a long season. Ended, I guess, essentially, I guess we'd say it would end in January.
Yes.
So, Greg, why don't you start by telling me about the Fiesta Bowl and how this competition on a national level, how it was different for you as a drum major and just as a performing in front of a national audience?
It was a little different because we traveled almost 3,000 miles for the specific purpose of this trip. There's nothing else that we went there for. All our work the whole season had been for this. So we go out there and we're with 10 of the bands from Georgia and Indiana, Florida. So it's a little different than competing around here when the bands are from Hatboro, Horsham, or Wissahickon or something like that. And plus the stands and just the atmosphere of the stadium, which was decorated for the Fiesta Bowl. So you go in there and the grass is nice and kept, and it's a wonderful feeling on a national level.
Okay, now Katie, on the same line as far as the actual performance and performing in the stadium, what was that like for you?
Just the feeling when you walked into the stadium was absolutely incredible. I mean, we've been to Giant Stadium before, but when we walked into ASU Stadium, you really did, because it was decorated for the Fiesta Bowl. As one of our staff members commented, you kind of felt like your own little Tostito in the huge stadium. It was absolutely amazing. The crowd was, I think, one of the biggest we've ever seen and encountered even in my 3 years of competition. It was an awesome experience, very much.
Okay, now Katie, the band took fourth place overall.
Yes.
And how did the auxiliary do? There's an auxiliary award. How did the Guard do?
The Color Guards got second place in Phoenix, and we were really excited because we worked really hard throughout the season, and we had a couple new things to work with, such as the big flags, and we practiced really hard, and we thought that it all paid off really well.
Okay, there's also a drumline award.
Yep.
Mike, how did the drumline fare?
Drumline, first place in the nation. It's quite an experience. When I came into the line my sophomore year, it was a bunch of seniors, and they had just come off from going to Phoenix the previous year, and they're like, "We won best drumline, you better be good." So I had a little bit of pressure put on my shoulders to compete well and play well in the line, so it was quite an experience. When they announced second place, I was like, man, we didn't even get second place, and they said first place, North Penn, and it just brought tears to my eyes. It was absolutely amazing.
Great. Now, as far as the crowd, you guys got a standing ovation. Crowd loved you. You got the People's Choice Award.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel when you listened to the crowd at the end of your show? I don't know if you even noticed it during the show, but at the end, when you're done and you're standing there, how did you feel?
Like you said, it's really difficult to notice it during the show because you become in a zone and you don't notice them reacting, because they do react to parts of the show during the show. But then afterwards, it's done, and we're kind of in a set where we're all just looking at the stands, and it's a wonderful feeling to know that what you just did and all the hard work that you would just put on for them, they're now appreciating you, and that we got them to stand and cheer, and many of them were crying. Our parents, even the other parents were crying. It was a wonderful feeling to see 10,000 people on their feet cheering for what we had just did.
Katie, how do you feel?
I conducted the end of the show, and when we'll finish the show, and it's an exhilarating moment for me. And when I turned around and saw the 10,000 people on their feet, I was, number one, I was amazed, and number two, I was just extremely proud and happy with our performance. It was really, really nice to see that even people all the way out to Arizona could appreciate all our work all through the season.
Okay, Katie, how do you feel?
This year we had a very emotional show, I feel, and also since I was a senior and it was my last show, I was kind of nervous about the show, and I wasn't really sure how people would react in Phoenix. So during the performance, I kept thinking, okay, they're liking this because of how the crowd is reacting. And then at the end, it's almost indescribable. We were standing there and watching the crowd just cheer for us. and you just got this feeling you were so proud of yourself and everybody that was on that field with you. It was great.
Mike?
Same, all these three people. 3 years of hard work finally paid off. It was, I'm lost for words. It was just one of the greatest feelings in the world. Just after we finished, we just looked up and standing ovation.
You'll see this at the end of the show. You'll hear the crowd. You don't get to see the crowd and the standing ovation, but you'll hear the crowd, and it is quite amazing, and it's an exciting show. Now, tell me about some of the activities. You just didn't perform. You did get to do some other things while on Arizona. You didn't go to another state and just hammer away at practice and perform and come home. Tell me about some of the things you did. Now, you can tell me about, you guys went to Rawhide. What's Rawhide?
Rawhide is like an old western town that they have kept up, and we went there, and there was a lot of other bands there. I think it was a band night, and most of the other bands were there, so there was kids there that we could intermingle with. They gave us like a steak dinner, and we could just walk around the town, and it's an old western town, so there's saloons. They're all souvenir shops, but there's saloons, and there's guys that go around and do reenactments. So it was a pretty interesting experience to see like part of the Old West.
Okay, now you go to Arizona. You've got to go to the Grand Canyon. How was that?
Grand Canyon was fun. I don't think the Marching Knights particularly appreciated the 4 o'clock wake-up call, but once we were on the bus, we were on the bus for about 5 hours, and when we got there, they opened us up to this one site, and we all got out and we're walking around, and it was absolutely amazing. And then they got us back on the buses, and we're like, wait a minute, we traveled how far? But they took us down to the lodge, and then we were able to go out and see it again in souvenir shop. And a whole bunch of people decided they wanted to hike. There were like lots of trails that they went on, and it was absolutely amazing just to see and experience and think, wow, I'm really at the Grand Canyon.
And we brought everyone back. Nobody was left in the Grand Canyon.
No. Fortunately, nobody's left.
Okay, now you also visited a wave pool. What was that? What was that about?
That was really fun because a lot of the times with this group of people, you spend a lot of time practicing, and you spend a lot of time within your own group. When we went to the wave pool, there was a gym and a wave pool and like tennis courts, and it was a good opportunity for everyone to have fun together as a huge group. And the wave pool, we had tubes, and it was great. And they had a slide, and the waves would run, and then you could go on the slide. It was a lot of fun. It was a change.
Okay. And Mike, there was a mandatory New Year's Eve party. It sounds like it's an awful thing, but how was the New Year's Eve party?
It was fun. There were a lot of people in a huge convention center in Arizona, and there was really loud music, and there were activities for kids to do. A big inflatable, beat yourself up, beat each other up, have fun. It was just another way to expend a lot of energy that was kept inside that you hadn't released. So.
Now, there were other bands at this party. Did any of you get a chance to meet with any of the other members of the other bands or talk to anybody in any?
I talked to some people who all pretty much reiterated the fact that they loved our show, and that it just moved them, and that it was an exciting show, and whatever place we took, whether it was technically correct or whatever, that it just moved them, and it was the most exciting show there.
Okay. What was the most memorable part of your whole season? You're all seniors. You're all going to be graduating. No more North Penn Marching Knights. You're done. What is the most memorable part for you? And Greg, you can start.
I think it was afterwards. After we performed, we left the field, and we had a long march back around to where we could, just stop and regroup. And it was a long march. And I just remember marching, and then we finally got there, and we could just stop and stand easy, and the staff started talking to us about how far we had come and about what we had accomplished. And just standing there with everyone and knowing that that was our last time that we would be together after competition, that was my most memorable point of the season.
Okay, Katie?
For me, it was right after I turned around and saw the crowd, and I acknowledged the band and turned back around, and I smiled. I was full of smiles. Everybody could tell. That's what everybody says. And to see their smiles, because they're right in front of me, and basically I can see mostly everybody, and the sense of pride, intrinsic pride, was just awesome.
Right.
I'll never forget it.
Katie?
After we finished and I realized that everyone was cheering for us and that we all worked together, that was a great feeling. And then even there were people, some of our instructors were saying, this is for you, this is what you do it for, like look up in the stands. And that was just so great when you realized it was all for us.
Great. Mike?
Well, after I tapped them off the field and we got our pictures taken and everything, Mr. Heller brought the whole band together and he gave a little speech, and then we just went nuts. It was one of the most happiest feelings I've ever had in my life, and it was just a great feeling to know that 3 years of hard work finally paid off. Best drumline in the nation, and it's amazing.
They should all be very proud. You guys had a great show. You've had great shows all 3 of your years. The community's very proud of you.
Thank you.
As a school district.
Thanks.
You guys did a great job. We're going to be going into our first segment. We're showing you the first segment of the North Penn Marching Night performance at the Fiesta Bowl. Katie, tell me about what this first segment, what it's about.
Right in the very beginning, we start off with a fife and drum little section that alternates from each side of the field. And representatively, we have the south on your left-hand side, and the right is the north. And they kind of come in and converge, and it sets up the scene for the battle. And we then break off into a section spotlighting the south. You'll see the Confederate flag, and that's entitled Dixie. Mm-hmm. Then there's a drum interlude, and then we go into something called Johnny, and that was obviously spotlighting the north. And then that leads us into our final pose, which will take us into the battle.
Okay, now what we're going to be doing is you'll see the first part of the North Penn Marching Show before we go to break, coming up next. And then we're going to go to break, and when we come back, you're going to see the second part of the show. And Greg, you directed that part. What happens there?
This is mainly the battle scene. You'll see the band on a large floor mat, so it's great. So the band is emphasized mainly in the middle of the field and doesn't leave that. And if you were to look around the band out in the field scattered, there is the color guard, and they're reenacting the battle scene. They're fighting, and the music, it's just portraying the death and the horror of the Civil Wars and all the death. And if you listen carefully, the drum line is in the back, literally screaming to represent, throngs of death, people dying. And the music just kind of emphasizes, the pain and horror that the Civil War brought upon our nation.
Okay, so now we go into the first part of North Penn Marching Night Show. We'll show you the second part on the way back from break, and then we'll finally show the finale at the end. We're going to keep you watching this whole half hour to catch the 10 minutes of the show. So enjoy the first part of the North Penn Marching Nights.
A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe that this government cannot endure permanently, half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect this house to fall. But I do expect that it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other. Abraham Lincoln, 1861.
four-letter word, right? Hey, you don't need that. Why design the world's newest chips? When you could be flipping the world's oldest burgers. Hey, wait a minute. This is math. Geometry, algebra. No pocket protectors here. But you're cruising without math. Yeah, right. Take a good look. That's math staring back at you. It's not a problem, man. It's an answer. Call NACME. We'll tell you what you need to do.
July 14th, 1861. Dear Sarah, the indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. Unless I would not be able to write you again, I feel impelled to write you a few lines that may fall under your eye when I am no more. My dear Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables. Nothing but omnipotence could break. And yet, my love of country comes over me like a strong wind, bears me irresistibly with all those chains to the battlefield. If I do not return, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I loved you, nor that when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Sarah, do not mourn me dead. Think I'm gone and wait for me, for we shall meet again.
It is rather for us here today to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead, we take an increased devotion to that cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these men shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish.
Welcome back to A Closer Look. That was part 2 of this year's Marching Night show. We're going to make you wait for the finale. We're breaking it up in 3 segments, making everybody wait to watch the show, because right now we have with us Mr. Ted Heller, the director of the band, Mr. Dale Miller, who is the Music Aids president, and Joe Scrizat, who is the trip coordinator for this year's Fiesta Bowl. And just watching the second part of that show, it's quite an exciting show and quite an exciting year. Tell me how the Marching Knights were invited to the Fiesta Bowl this year.
This goes back to last February. We had tried to do a national, we're on a 3-year rotation for taking a trip. Well, back in February, I tried to get into another circuit, and they were scheduled to do a competition in St. Louis in the TWA Dome, so I was excited about that. It fell through because U2 had a concert scheduled at the same time, so all of a sudden I didn't have a location. The same week, I got a call from the Fiesta Bowl offering the Marching Knights an invitation. Now, that's rare in itself because there's this big application process you have to go through to get into the Fiesta Bowl. So we were rather honored to just be asked to come out. And I spoke to them. I said, I'll get back to them as soon as I can. I spoke to all the appropriate people, did my forms, and I got back to them very excited and pleased about our 4th time going out to Phoenix, Arizona.
Now, typically, how long does it take as far as the process? You know, you did it in basically, I guess, a week or 2, the process for being invited. Now, if you were trying to go to the Fiesta Bowl, what
They
would
are
the process
they're
be?
locked in. They were locked in for next year's bands before the Marching Knights went out for this year's show already. So it's over a year, the applications. There is a long list of applications. It's quite an honor just to be invited to this event.
Now, you've had several trips since you've been band director, and several trips you've been along as staff as well.
And a student.
And a student.
Right.
How has those trips helped you to plan for this year's show?
Well, in my first year, we went to Dallas, Texas with the Marching Knights in the WGI Friendship Cup. And my first year, I knew, in addition to my teaching schedule and the marching band, I couldn't stay on top of things. So my first thing was to invite Joe Scurzat to be my trip coordinator. He dealt with all the travel agents, and with all his contacts and all my contacts, we were able to get together, put a nice package together for the first year. Around the second trip we took, which was the third time the Marching Knights went to Phoenix, Arizona, we had pretty much a good working relationship going, and this time we had pretty much the same packet to hand out, just the timeline was a little different, that's all.
Okay. Now, the Marching Knights couldn't compete on a national level as far as going to another state and taking a long-distance trip without the music aids. Dale, if you could tell me a little bit about how you pull the parents together, just even prop-wise. There are big props for this show, the uniforms, and then just how do you get the parents together to get them to Arizona?
Well, the North Penn Music Aids have a very long tradition of being supportive for the Marching Knights, and it's really easier than you might guess to get parents to come out and work on different projects. I know this year we had a tremendous project to create the flags. If anyone had been in the high school lobby this August, they would have seen it filled with this flag. But you know, there's so many things that go on, like the sewing committee. These people come out, they willingly volunteer. They're here till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night to get it accomplished in the time frame that we need it to be done. So really, you know, people are out there, parents and others, readily willing to do that kind of thing. And there's so many other things besides sewing that need to be done. We have the crew who acted as chaperones for this trip, as well as being the crew who get all the equipment out of the field that needs to be there. We have people running fundraisers to make it all possible financially. So it's not a hard problem to get people out. We can do that easily.
Now, Joe, you were the trip coordinator for the Fiesta Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what was your role? When did you find out? When did Mr. Heller let you know when it was happening? And what was your role at that point?
Well, as Ted mentioned previously, this is the third time that I've been trip coordinator for him. For his, and then twice I did this for Peter New. So Ted approached me, I guess it was in May of '97, and asked if I would be willing to serve again as trip coordinator for the upcoming trip to Phoenix. And I said, sure. So there was enough lead time from that standpoint, and the initial contacts were already made. And again, as he said, we had our, we knew the routine, both from Phoenix as well as knowing what needs to go into a band trip. As far as my responsibility was logistics. Mm-hmm. As I've explained to other people, by having a trip coordinator, the band director can put his focus on the music. And if there's a motel or hotel reservation that's not in order, or a rental car that's not in order, or somebody's instrument goes to Minot, North Dakota instead of Phoenix, I'll take care of that, and he can concentrate with his staff on the music.
Okay.
So we have our routine down.
Now, there's if anybody's seen a show or been even here at the Night of Sound, bands have a lot of equipment, a lot of pit, even the drums and the instruments. In addition to moving, how'd you get all that equipment out there? In addition to getting the students to Arizona, how did that process work?
The major pieces of equipment went by commercial truck. It was loaded here in the parking lot of North Penn High School about a week before Christmas, and it was sent out. They guaranteed to be there on time when we arrived, so that the quartermaster and his crew, as soon as we got there, that was their first. The trailer was sitting there, so they immediately opened it up, made sure everything was in order, which it was. The students, we went United Airlines. That's not a plug for United, but that's how we went on United. And we also, the students took their own luggage there, and limited to what the space was on the aircraft. So.
Okay. Dale, could you tell me how many parents, as part of the music age, chaperone-wise, and staff, and I don't know, Ted, if you would help with this as far as how many staff, but how many non-marching night people went along with this trip to help coordinate the students and the equipment?
Actually, there were 2 trips going on here. I don't know if you're aware of that, but there was the Marching Knights trip with the chaperones and so forth. Then there was a separate parents trip. So altogether, way over 300 people went from North Penn out to the Fiesta Bowl. But for the actual chaperones, we used mainly the crew members with some additional people, and I would say there were probably about 22 chaperones along with them, along with Mrs. Newman, who's the assistant principal here at the high school, and Mr. Frederick, a former band director. So we had around 25 people altogether for chaperone purposes.
Okay. Now you arrive in Arizona, first wave comes in, second wave comes in, your equipment's there. Yeah. What's your practice schedule? What does your days up to the competition look like?
Well, day one, the first thing we wanted to do was get them acclimated to the climate, drier air, get them acclimated to the time change of 2 hours. So as soon as we got everyone out there, we got together, all of us, somewhere around 8 o'clock Arizona time, and we just did a little stretching just to keep them, again, like on that time schedule and wake up their bodies, because it was a tough traveling. Joe mentioned we took United, but United took us, some of us out to LA, some to San Francisco, and then back to Phoenix to get the best tickets. So we had 3 different groups coming in at different times. Once we had everyone out there, then the first day was a large day of rehearsing. And so that was Saturday. And then Sunday we rehearsed in the morning and the afternoon. We went back to the hotel, freshened up, and then that evening we went to what they refer to Box Canyon. And they went out on these carts that the horses took them out on, and they had a little sing-along and hot dogs, hamburgers around the campfire. That was Sunday night. Monday was a rehearsal, and then the Fiesta Bowl National Pageant of Bands that evening. Following the competition, we went back to the hotel and just relaxed. Tuesday, they got up a little bit before the sun, at around 4 o'clock in the morning, and went on a 4.5-hour ride up to the Grand Canyon. We spent a couple of hours up there, came back, and then that evening we went to Rawhide, which is like a southwestern style town, where they were to, you can buy some things and just enjoy the atmosphere. Then the last day was really a lot of fun, where we woke up, we went, had breakfast at the hotel, went to the mall, did our shopping that we needed to do, went to the Kiwanis wave pool they have out there, which you could play some volleyball, basketball, and swimming. Great event. And then after the Kiwanis wave pool,
we went to Oregon Stop, too.
Oh, yeah, the Oregon Stop pizza place we visited. But the biggest event, which we had the pleasure of hosting, was, or being chaperones, that was the New Year's Eve party. All bands are required to go to the New Year's Eve party. So we went to the Phoenix Convention Center with approximately 3,000 students on New Year's Eve, and just partied with them all night. Something I always wanted to do. I didn't want to be with my family. I wanted to be with 3,000 high school students.
All right, now the day of the show, you were in the crowd, Joe.
I was in the crowd.
And I guess we can approximate there were, I don't know how many parents, North Penn parents were really in the crowd.
They approximated close to 10,000 people total in the stadium.
How many North Penn people?
At least 100.
100.
At least.
Okay, 100 out of 10,000 people.
By the end of the show, I might add, there was about 10,000 North Penn people there.
Well, that's what I was going to ask as far as what was the reaction of the crowd. You're sitting in the crowd. You're probably surrounded by North Penn people, but the reaction of people who had never seen the band before.
Well, first of all, the enthusiasm of the North Penn parents was contagious. The band did the show to end all shows, and it did not go unnoticed by the crowd. Because of the 10 bands in competition, they were all well received, but it's been reported before, North Penn was the only band to get a standing ovation from the entire stadium. So it was just, it was electrifying, and that word is not being overused. That's how good it was. And the judges had to allow time for the audience applause before the band was permitted to leave the field, because it was that enthusiastic.
Now, You've done many shows, nationally. How did you feel about this show?
Our show was fabulous. We tell the students from day one, in marching band, you don't worry about trophies. Believe it or not, you read a lot about the trophies that we receive in the papers, but we don't. That's not the emphasis. The emphasis is on performance. Yes, we walked away with 4th place.
Mm-hmm.
We took 1st in percussion, 2nd in auxiliary. But one of the biggest honors is we're there to perform, and we received the Audience Appeal Award. And that's what it's all about. We tell these kids, you're here to perform, and when they finished the last note and the kids had exhausted all energies, and they were being rewarded with a standing ovation of 10,000 people just going crazy, it's something special. And these kids most likely, and even the people down there, probably won't experience something like that.
Mm-hmm.
These bands from different parts of the country, they don't necessarily have, we have an exciting show. Other shows are clean and interesting, but they're not exciting. We filled the excitement that day.
North Penn always has a great show every single year. And every single year I think it's a national show worth competition on that level.
Because of the ingredients of the parents, the students, the staff, the administration, it's a team effort. It's great being the director, but I don't do it all. It's all the people that do it with me.
Okay. Now, as we go out here at the end of the show, we're going to be showing the finale at the Festival. And I think we're going to feel the excitement. As we build into the end of this, we're going to hear the crowd. Tell me about the theme. We've talked about the theme in the first 2 parts. Let's talk about the theme for the finale for people who haven't seen the show. What part of this show?
The 3rd part of the show is basically the unification of America. A lot of pomp and circumstance and red, white, and blue, and lots of excitement. So in a show, you want to add velocity, a lot of color, a lot of sound, and I think that will be reflective in the performance you're about to see. Unfortunately, you can't see the audience. That's the other portion. When you see all those people go crazy, I'm telling you,
You're going to hear it.
Spectacular.
You'll hear them. You'll hear them.
You got to see them.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. Ted, thank you. Dale, Joe, thank you for joining us. I'd like to thank the North Penn Marching Knights and the Music Aids for providing such an exciting season. And I think as you see the end of this show, you're going to see why 10,000 people voted. Well, people and the crowd had a standing ovation for the North Penn Marching Knights. It's quite an exciting show and quite an exciting season.
Thank you.
So I thank you. The community, I'm sure, is very appreciative and always enjoys your shows. I'd also like to thank Katie Love, Greg Fox, Katie Laps, and Mike Wojciech for joining us on the show today. Great interviews. Thank you, guys. And thank you for watching. Enjoy the North Penn Marching Knights.
It is rather for us here today to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead, we take an increased devotion to that cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these men shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth.
They've given our generation a label. X. Generation Nothing. They say we have no sense of purpose. They say we have no war to fight and no cause to believe in. Who are they? Join the thousands of us who are making a difference and wear a label that does mean something.